is being recorded.
You ring me, Sue?
No.
All right, I think I'm going to make a start, although I do apologise because Mildura, you look like you're having a really good conversation up there. So I was thinking, I don't want to interrupt, but I am a bit of a stickler for starting on time. I'm hoping that we won't take all of our time today. Before we do start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the various lands on which we are meeting today and pay my respects to elders past and present. I'd also just like to acknowledge that I'm recording this because I don't expect we're going to be without issues around the technology. So I'm just going to record it just in case I'm able to upload it to the very delightful YouTube channel so that we can, others can dial in as well later on. So just to be mindful that I am recording it. Not that I imagine anyone has too many objections to that, but just to let you know that that's the case. I'm not very good at doing this on WebEx because I can't see everybody, but I think we probably should just whip around the various sites just to do quick introductions if we can. I'm going to go to Greensboro second because then you'll have time to go and press the screen to unmute so you can ask a question. I might start in Mildura if you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Hi Rachel, so up in Mildura, I've got Beck Burgess, EPAPA at the Department of Education.
Cindy Hint-Hosel, Best Start Facilitator at Rumba.
Kia ora, my name's Sam Dodds. I'm the Early Years Project Officer in Mildura based at the Council.
And Anna Kilpatrick, Best Start Facilitator at Rumba.
Excellent, thanks guys. I imagine very hot up there today.
You're on here.
It's hot everywhere. It's hot in Melbourne today, so it's just hot everywhere, I think. But yeah, I imagine very, very hot up there. At Greensboro.
I'm Sue. I'm the Best Start Facilitator at Nillumbik.
Yvette, Best Start Facilitator, Darabin Council.
And Michelle, Best Start Facilitator at Whittlesea.
Thanks for joining us. And in Coburg.
Kelly, I'm the Best Start Facilitator for Hume.
And Anita, EPAPA, Hume Moreland.
Now, I think I can see Sandra. Is Sandra calling in as well?
Hello.
Hey, how you going?
Good, thanks. Just Sandra from the inner Gippsland area as the Early Childhood Support Officer.
And I think Raquel, is Raquel there? We've got technology working today, which is good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm Raquel, the Best Start Facilitator in Wellington.
And we've got some other people dialing in. If people dialing in want to just introduce themselves, feel free. I'm just like, because I can't see everybody on WebEx, unfortunately, so I don't know who else I'm missing at this point in time. But okay. I'm just going to assume that they're not going to introduce themselves. We'll be right. So the purpose of today's session is really just to bring everybody up to speed on sort of what you need to have done for the on the portal. I do flag, and I apologise in advance, but this is my first day back from leave and I have literally looked at the portal for about 5 minutes this morning. So I feel as though I'm a little bit rusty, but I'll try and do my best to make sure that we, at least, you leave here knowing what you should be up to. I don't have a whole heap of information around indicators that people want to create, but I think that's because they're mostly covered in the indicators that are there anyway. But if that's not the case, feel free to ask any questions, and certainly ask any questions as we go anyway. This is absolutely the time for you to just, it's because now the portal support sits with MCRI. This is just the opportunity to kind of touch base, to give you a bit of an overview before you kind of, rather than having to ask them a million questions as you go kind of thing. So anything portal related, happy to have those questions asked now. One of the things that I just wanted to highlight first up relates to the report tab. So I'll just go in here. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that the annual report is now uploaded in the report tab, but in his delightful wisdom, the developer also added in the finance report, which is very helpful to us, but it's also very, very confusing because obviously the financial report goes on a financial year and the annual report is a calendar year. So just to let you know, upload your annual report in this section, just using the usual, browse, find your file, upload the report, not too complicated. And then with the finance report, if you could please upload the one for the 2019 year, you will upload the 2018-19 financial report, just so that's sitting there. So it is very helpful to us to have everything sitting in the one spot. It's just unfortunate because of the difference. It's a little bit, I know I found it kind of ambiguous because we're putting it in the same spot. But if everyone's just aware that that report tab is where you'll upload your annual report, and that you'll also put in the finance report, and the finance report will be the most recent completed financial report. So for 2019, it's 2018-19. Okay, so I'm just going to real quick go through where things should be at for each of your sites, but please jump in at any time if you've got questions. So one of the things that you need to make sure that you're doing, obviously, is uploading your logic model. So in the plan section, please make sure that you are uploading your logic model, just the usual method, add the model, enter in the title, whatever you want to call the logic model, whatever outcome areas you're focusing in on, and upload that. Now that won't generate standard survey questions, but there are standard survey questions for each of those short-term outcome areas if you want them down the track. I apologise, I've got notes on my phone, so I have to keep looking at my phone to run through this. So another reminder is that the demo DET2 site, all facilitators should have access to that as a facilitator. This is a spot where you can mess around as much as you like. If it is if the scheme is confirmed, you just have to call MCRI and ask them to deconfirm it for you, because what we'd rather you do is put things in that don't look right in the demo site than to do it on your own site where you're stuck with it for 12 months. So just really encourage people to jump onto this particular site and to just test. If you're not sure about how an indicator is going to look, for instance, this is the place that you can do that, and you all have access to that as a facilitator. If someone doesn't have access for some reason, please let me know, because I'll make sure that I can arrange for you to get that access, because it is important, that particular site. So first of all, then once you've done the plan tab, then it's really the setup tab. So this is where, you're setting up your schema, and this is absolutely the business end of it. For most of you, you will have seen this before and done this, like several times before, potentially. For others, this will be the first time you've actually looked at it. So just want to run through it for everybody, as a bit of a refresher anyway, because you only do it once a year, so it's kind of handy, I think, to just have that touch base around it again. But again, any questions at all or any comments, just please jump in. So the point of the schema tab is that we are looking at this as the way that improvement science works in an ideal way. So we want to lock in things like your measures, but we don't want to lock in the services, for instance, that you're going to survey, or the way the dashboard looks, because over time that potentially is going to change and we don't want that to be fixed. So just a reminder that when you confirm your schema, you have to have your logic model in, and so that plan tab has to be completed before you confirm your schema. Make sure that you've uploaded your logic model already, because we've had a couple of times where people have confirmed the schema and we've had to deconfirm just so they can put the logic model in. So just a reminder to do that. It's not a big deal to deconfirm your schema. That's the other thing that I wanted to stress as well. If you find that you've confirmed your schema and you need to get that deconfirmed so that you can make a change, do not hesitate to call MCRI to get that done. It takes 2 seconds. And it's really important that you get your schema right. So even if you have to do that 15 times, we'd rather you do it 15 times than have something sitting on your schema that shouldn't be there. So don't worry about getting your schema deconfirmed. It's not a big issue at all, but we do, once it is locked in, then that's when you're stuck with it for 12 months. So that's why it is important to get it right. So in terms of this, the engaged services, you can change those at any time throughout the year. So this is not as important to get right at this point in time. The next thing is around the surveys. So just a reminder, we're a little ambiguous in our messaging around surveys, and I apologise for that, because obviously when I had those one-to-one catch-ups with everybody last year, we were very clear on the fact that surveying is no longer a measure of improvement. It's not effective for that, and really encouraging you to have discretion at the local level around how surveying will work for you. Unfortunately, then we also then released the self-reflection tool that said you must be surveying, and kind of got you to assess yourselves on the how often you're surveying. So it was a bit ambiguous in terms of the way that we were messaging around surveys. So just to be clear, we do want you to be doing surveys. We do think that it is an important part of the process, but it's a much more important part of the process in terms of identifying emerging issues in your community, and also working out what people would like what families or services think they could do better. So it's around generating change ideas. So the free text questions are a lot more important now than they may have been in the past, because when you have those free text questions, then people have the opportunity to actually provide some input around what they would like to see happening to generate improvement in in your service or whatever it might be. So definitely encourage those free text questions, but there is discretion on how you do the surveying, and we do have to rely on you to know what's going to work best. What we don't want is that you use all your goodwill around with our services to do surveying as opposed to doing some PDSAs. PDSAs is always a priority for us. If we can get people doing PDSAs, then that is absolutely where we want to see the focus, because that's where we get to see outcomes. So once again, you can add libraries for the surveys. So if you are focusing in on relationship-based practice, there are some standard questions there that you may want to put in. It's completely up to you what you do with those. So if you selected a library, so now that's sitting in that list. Now, don't forget that you can edit these in any way. So if you like, one of the questions, maybe you just want this last question, then you can leave just that last question. You can delete the others. You can edit them in any way you like. If you confirm your schema though, the questions will be fixed there. So try to make sure you get your survey questions right before you confirm your schema. Otherwise, the alternative is that you just make it an inactive question. So you would go in and edit it, and instead of it being is active, you just deselect that to to make sure that it is sitting as an active question. So it'll still appear in your setup tab, but it won't actually come out in your surveys when you send them out. So you can see that this one now is not active. So that's the same for service surveys, and as always you can add in any new questions that you like. So you might want to use the standard library questions, you might want to just use completely customised questions. Whatever works for you locally is what you will do in this particular area. Once again, just a reminder that the survey previews will tell you exactly what surveys will look like for each cohort prior to you sending them out. External data indicators. This is the one that I always recommend that you add the library, regardless of whether or not you use it on your dashboard. It's one of those things that it's a bit of a no-brainer for me because we provide the data. So it's something that you can have sitting in the background. You can have a look at the data as a facilitator, not necessarily display it on the dashboard. It just helps you because you might find something in there that's really interesting that you do want to display on the dashboard. It's better just to have it than not because it's just no skin off your nose to add it in basically. So I recommend everybody at least add that external data indicators, whether you use it or not, for display on the dashboard. I'm just going to skip over the local indicators for a moment. Then the dashboard layouts, this is also the part that you can modify at any time throughout the year. So we want you to be able to change the dashboard layouts whenever you need to. And you might find that you're getting some data that is emerging that is actually more interesting than you thought it was going to be. And so at the start, you might not be displaying that particular data, but then you might choose to do that afterwards. Just wanted to highlight this section. When you get to the display section, if you're using live data at the start of the year, it's not going to be very helpful because as you can see here, you don't have any data in there. And so therefore you don't know what the graphs are going to look like. So just wanted to highlight that you should be using the demo data, just so that then you can see what the chart is going to look like. So when you go in to configure charts, the best way to work out what's meaningful is just to have a play around with it. Unless you're really, really, really adept at charts, which I'm certainly not, this is the best way to work out what's going to work for you. You can start to see whether things make sense. You can make, charts bigger, whatever. It's up to you how you're going to display your data, but going in and having a play around with this is the best way. Like something like this is completely useless, and so it's really important to go in and play with the demo data to work out how you can set up your charts in a way that's actually going to be meaningful for your particular site. So just again flagging that can be updated at any time throughout the year, so you're not stuck with that. So you might find that, once you get further into the year, you might find that something is actually quite meaningful to display in a different way. I just wanted to talk about the standard libraries that are in here. So there's several standard libraries. Most of them have been added by various people to this particular site anyway for 2020. So this is the demo site. But one of the things that I really wanted to highlight was there are some that have a target and median, and the median is really, really good for people who are using run charts effectively. And I will, after the session, I'll send out some information on run charts that kind of touches on the median line and why it's important. For most people though, that's probably going to add a level of complexity to your graph that you don't need at the minute. In terms of the pure science, it's brilliant, and if you can do it, that's great, but we don't necessarily expect you to use the median line. So I just wanted to flag that some of those standard indicators will have the median in there. Just be mindful that if you're not sure how to use it, just either delete that indicator or just delete the median. So just instead of it being 3 rows, just change it to 2 rows and make it the target and actual. So you have that flexibility to be able to do that for your own local graphs. So as I said, I will set out some more information because I am not good at explaining the science behind it, other than to say that it's how, by having the median line, it is how you are actually able to demonstrate that you've had genuine improvement. And so it is an important thing to have if you understand it, but it might confuse a number of people. And because at the moment what we're trying to do is get people to just engage with the portal to be able to display monthly measures, it's better that we can get some monthly measures on there than to confuse it by having a median line if that's not something that you're familiar with. So that was one of the things I wanted to highlight. Sorry, just checking there's no questions at this point. I'll just check what else I need to make sure I don't forget. Yeah, just remembering that if you do add a local data indicator library, you don't have to keep all of them. So if I go here and I want to add, say, AEDC, so you can see that indicator is here, but I don't necessarily want this one. So I'm going to delete that indicator. And so now that indicator is not there. So when you go through, when you add a library, those libraries that are there are really convenient. Things like the target and actual for ESK enrolments, for instance, that is really helpful. We would love to see everyone pretty well having a monthly ESK enrolment with a target and an actual, you know, that comes like you're actually looking at an annual target, for instance, and that you're just cumulative, like you're adding the cumulative total so that you're working, you can create a line chart that then, you know, allows you to see how you're progressing towards your target. That's really helpful. So we'd like to see that, but we also, if you're going to have ESK enrolments with target, you don't need to have ESK enrolments with no target, so you can delete that one as an indicator. So, and you might not necessarily want to break down between Aboriginal kids and kids under child protection, so you might want to delete that one. You might want to add, replicate the charts so that you have exactly the same thing again. So if we were going to have ESK target, you might want to change it to just a particular area. Like maybe you're looking at, you know, 2 different locations that you're focusing in on in your work around ESK enrolment. So rather than it being across the entire LGA, for instance, you might have 2 particular areas that you want to really increase the number of ESK kids. So maybe that's what you'll do. Similarly with MCH, it's probably easy with MCH because you might get MCH data at from a particular MCH centre, and so you can replicate exactly these indicators, but just change the title. I do want to also remind everyone that you can change the title, because I find the titles of all of the indicators really clunky. Not really helpful at all. So just a reminder that you can actually change them to make them something meaningful for you at the local level. And I think it's better to do that because I just think it looks nicer on the graphs if you've got something that is a bit more meaningful than ESK enrolments with targets. Completely up to you, but just a reminder that you do actually have that flexibility. Okay. Are there any questions at this point around these libraries at all? Okay. I'm going to go with no because it's just, you know, it's cool. Great and everyone knows what they're doing. Is that
just
yes.
Sandra, I had a question from one of the facilitators in my area, and they were wondering if they could actually change the legends along the graphs to suit the information inputted into the graph. Do that as well.
The only way you can change, so the legend will pick up what's written as the rows and the columns.
Okay.
That's the only way you can change it. So theoretically, yes, you can do that, but that's the only way to do it. So you have to make sure that it's the rows and the columns reflect, because the legend will always pick up from the rows and columns. You can flip those around, okay, so it switches between the two. You have that degree of flexibility, but what's written has to be what's in the rows and columns. So if they started off with something and they needed to change it, then they could do that. But that's a case of deconfirming so you deconfirm the schema, you definalise the collection. So we have to do a bit of both on that one. So it gets a little bit complicated to change it later down the track. So if they can keep the rows as or rows or columns, the information there consistent throughout the year, then they can switch between the two in terms of what's displayed on the legend. Otherwise, realistically, the best way to do it is to create a whole new indicator and then just display that indicator. Like if it changes over the 12 months, you'd actually want to add a completely new indicator and then re-enter the data
Okay.
be able to change what's written on the legend. So there's unfortunately there's not a whole lot of flexibility around that. It's really locked in. And again, the intention is the reason for that is because you're taking that pure improvement science approach where those kind of measures should be locked in for a 12-month period because you're trying to work out over 12 months. That's the theory behind it. That's why it's locked in. It just makes it a bit clunky when you're trying to, if you want to have that flexibility. So
yeah, thanks for that.
It's not really helpful, but anyway, that's how it is.
Clarified.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. So again, the other thing you can do is you can add a new indicator at any time. And so this is where you might want to have your monthly indicators put in. You can put in an annual indicator. So, you know, this is per month, but if I wanted to make it just once, so you might have, you know, June, so you only want to do it once in the year. You can do that with survey questions as well. So you might want to do like a biannual survey, for instance, and so therefore you might, an annual survey. So you just have it in June and that would be it kind of thing. And yeah, because that's, you want a mid-year collection or something like that, particular surveys, you can do that. Similarly, you know, if you want to use this to collect data, you know, potentially around like your MCH surveys or, you know, maybe an EYM wants to send out a survey, you can use this facility to do that just on an annual basis by just selecting that one collection period, if that's what, you know, something that you're interested in doing. But these are the local indicators. You've got all that flexibility in terms of how, you know, what you name it, where you put it in the charts, etc. It's just like an Excel spreadsheet. So, you know, if you need to change the number of rows, then that's what you do. It's one of those things, though. It can sometimes you can think you've got it right, and until you display it, and then you think, oh, well, actually, it's not so right after all. Sometimes we're going to have to change those around. That's why we've created these indicator libraries for the most common indicators, and we're hoping that that'll pretty well cover off most people in terms of what you want to have from a monthly indicator perspective. If there are additional indicators and you're not sure how to set them up, feel free to call around that. I'm happy to work through it with you because I think it's important that we get it right. If you know, and you can certainly try and do it yourself on the demo site, the demo DET2 site, but I just want to make sure that everyone is, you know, if you can't do it, we can work through it together if you do have some particular indicator that you'd like to have displayed. So I do want to just highlight that you can feel free to do that if there are any challenges around that. But generally speaking, I do think that we've covered most of the ones that you guys were using last year, if people were using monthly measures last year. Now, obviously, it's not got the same flexibility because one of the things that would be really great to have is, if you're looking at monthly measures, one thing that is helpful is to see, like to be able to put a note in around, you know, what PDSAs were tested in that month, for instance. That would be perfect, but unfortunately, we don't have that functionality on our chart. So, because it's just one of those things that if you know that you've been working on a particular PDSA, you know, around ESK uptake, for instance, it's great if you're actually able to point to that on the chart and say, well, this is the reason, you know, this is what we've been doing in this month, and then, you know, try it again and see if that still has a sustained impact the following month. Unfortunately, we can't do that, but it is certainly something that at least having the data allows you then to create the narrative around what's going on in your site. I'm just going to check my notes to see if I've got anything else that I needed to cover off. I did have a question from one site that I'll just display, and this is in relation to how to display targets properly. So I'm just going to right. So I've put in here how to display a target and actual data, like, you know, to set the chart for that, just so that people can go for reference. Because a lot of people would like to be able to set up a line chart, and this just allows you. So this is again in the demo DET2 site, but I put it in the 2019 schema, so it will stay there now so you can actually see it. So it's the first one that you see on that particular site. So this just gives you the opportunity to go through and work out exactly how the chart is set up in order to display the target and actual effectively. So this is just a good reference point if you'd like it for your setting up your own graphs. The other thing that we've done better this year, which I really messed up last year, was the target and actual will sit, like if it's target first, then target stays first consistently, because what was happening previously is that sometimes the target line would be blue and sometimes it'd be green because I'd flipped them around accidentally, not realising when I'd set the libraries that I'd done that. So this year we've corrected that, and so the libraries actually sit properly now, and it'll be consistent colour, because you don't want to, obviously if you've got a target line, you want that to be consistently green or consistently blue rather than changing which graph, depending which graph you look at. So that's the other thing that's kind of handy on the next one. I don't think I've got anything else that I needed to show, because the other one, there's a kindergarten participation was another one that people were curious about setting up, but there is actually a standard library around kindergarten participation, so that's already in there. I did just want to flag though that if you are looking, obviously we're looking more at kindergarten attendance rather than participation, because obviously participation is an annual figure, but in terms of attendance, just a reminder that percentages of what you're looking at, just because percentages then won't be influenced by holiday periods, etc. I don't think I have anything else, which gives us all an awful lot of time back in our day. But I do want to just check in if there are any other questions at this point in time. Firstly about the portal, but I'm happy to take other questions as well, if there are any. Yeah, hey Mildura.
There you go, Sam. Sorry, we just had to wait for our microphone to go back on.
Yeah, cool.
So in the external data indicators, when it says per cycle, they will be uploaded at the end of each quarter. Is that a cycle?
Yeah, generally speaking, we try to get up as quickly as we can in the quarter. When I was doing it, I was actually probably being really annoying because I was uploading it, like when the ESK data came in, I just update it each month. And so that probably wasn't ideal, because then you'd be having changing numbers. MCRO will just do it quarterly, so they'll do it just after the quarter. But that's where, the ESK data monthly is really important, because like when you have the quarterly data, you can't see where you've had the impact really. Like you don't really know which month, like whether the PDSAs that you've been working on have, you can kind of hope that that's what has led to the increase. But realistically, we feel as though the monthly ESK measure is going to be more effective for people. So
that was all. Thank you.
No worries. Okay, well, while you're waiting, if you think of anything, just jump in. The other thing I just wanted to flag is that this year we will be using, we're going to offer a few sessions that are going to be basically facilitator-led sessions. I'm happy to, I've coordinated them with the ECPUPers around the state, and we'll get ECPUPers to send out the calendar invites, because I've sent them out as placeholders just for now for the rest of the year. So I think there's 5 sessions that we've set up. So what is going to happen, I just wanted to let you know around this. They're certainly not compulsory sessions at all. These are sessions that have been set up just so that facilitators, we're really aware that facilitators are very isolated in your roles. And so the idea of this is just to provide something each month for all of our facilitators to be able to have some opportunity for sharing. So we'll have, the reason it's monthly is because you'll also have the Innovation Network meetings. They will continue. Kelly, I think there's 2 more this year from memory. I think there's 2 that we've got scheduled for this year from the Innovation Network meeting perspective. So they will happen again, and we'll confirm exactly the makeup of those in coming weeks. So we'll have those. We'll have a forum. At this stage, the forum is scheduled for April, but we'll confirm that as well. So that'll be the statewide forum face-to-face in the city somewhere. And as I said, we will confirm that as soon as we can. And then the other thing will just be these WebEx meetings. So basically what we want to do is we want to have an opportunity for facilitators to come together as often as possible, just so that you can talk about any emerging issues and we can troubleshoot them together. We'd much rather have, because you are really isolated and going off and doing really, really complex work, in your communities, everybody's got similar challenges, but you don't realise it until we actually have these moments to come together. So the point is really just to facilitate a conversation. We do have some topics that we'll kind of cover that are relevant to each point in the year, but it's really going to be over to you guys to, you know, if it's useful to you or not. So we'll give it a try, and if they aren't useful, then we can scrap them. That's completely fine. And as I said, they're certainly not compulsory or anything. You know, we're similar to this in that if you want to dial in, you can dial in. All of our regional offices have booked rooms so that you can come into the regional office for those meetings. You can attempt to dial in from other locations, but we know that technology can sometimes be a little bit hit and miss. But hopefully this will be an opportunity just to share the learning as it's going, rather than waiting 12 months, you know, before we come together and share it. We just want to have opportunities for really problem solving together, and you know, people who are in the same situation as you, who are no doubt coming up against the same issues as you. People might be able to say, well, this is what I tried and this worked, and somebody else might have something completely different that they tried and worked. So it's just about maximising opportunities for collaboration between sites. So that is all that is about. So we'll get the ECPAPers will start sending out those invites, because I think the first one might be in February, so that's really cutting it fine. But anyway, if you can make it, you can make it. So that's really the theory around them. We'll run them, and if we have 5 facilitators, great. If we have 30 facilitators, even better. So completely up to you guys, but we will get those invites out soon. Are there any other just general Best Start questions, if not portal questions at this point? Doesn't look like it. Looks like we're just going to have a whole lot of time back in our day, everybody. This is very exciting. It's probably a lot better to just upload a 30-minute video rather than a really long one anyway, so this is probably good.
We just have a question up here, Rachel, if that's okay.
Rachel, I just had a couple of questions about the annual report, which I'm just trying to find now. I just found some of the terminology a little bit confusing, even though it had been updated. Mm-hmm. And I was just wondering what other people's views on there. I'm just trying to get into it. I found a lot of it was based around the short-term outcome areas. Am I reading that right? Like service, accessibility, right, and stuff like that. Whereas there was nothing about the high-level strategies, and then I found that.
Because so the idea of this annual report is that it's just an opportunity for you to tell a story about what you've achieved in the last 12 months. So that's the point of it. It's to really look at, like, if we focus on 2 short-term outcome areas, so, you know, service accessibility and cultural safety, for instance. This is what we've done, this is what we've learned. That's really what we want. We just want it to be an opportunity at that really high level, because what we don't want is for people to have to spend huge amounts of time, you know, really focusing in on the annual report. We want you to be able to get your logic model done. We want you to be able to start planning for next year, for this year rather, and you know how you're going to engage partners and that kind of stuff. We found that the previous report was really, really long and complex. We don't want this one to be that long and complex. We want it to be a storytelling opportunity for you, really, and that's really it. So that's why we're focusing in on the short-term outcome area level.
Okay, I think that makes it a bit clearer. Thank you.
It's probably, you know, it's probably not ideal, because this is the other thing too. Like for some people, really long reports where you get to outline everything is really important, and for others, and I'm looking at you, Cindy, the least. That being more brief is actually appreciated, and so this has kind of, the intent of this one is to give you a little bit more flexibility on whether you want to be A or B. So it's up to you on this one. So,
Rachel, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just about the annual report. In terms of the changes that were made, were any facilitators involved in that?
Yeah.
I just wondered because, I think like Mildura, I found it a bit confusing the way it was worded at times.
Yeah. Yep. No, we had several sites and regional staff and MCRI were all involved in the consultation around that one. So, yeah. The other thing I just wanted to remind everybody is for portal support, the telephone number does come up at the front, but it's 83416462. So again, if you need to have your schema deconfirmed or anything along those lines, then that's the number to call. And then the other thing is the email is collaborate@mcri.edu.au. So again, that should be not the email. Sorry, there was some background noise there. Collaborate@mcri.edu.au. So that's for any portal queries and things like deconfirming your schema, etc. That's where you go to do that. And then the other thing is around definalising the collection. We are looking at making that a facilitator function. So just to keep that in mind, it isn't currently, but it is likely that facilitators will actually be able to definalise the collection period. So if you're doing monthly data, one of the other limitations is the portal is set up on a quarterly basis. And so you would have, if you want to display data, say you wanted to display January data now, the actual period doesn't end until March. So if you were to display it, you'd have to finalise your collection period. So you put in 0 values for February and March, and then you'd have your January data sitting there. That's obviously problematic because then you'd have to call MCRI to get them to definalise your collection period. At the moment, as it stands, what we are aiming for is that becomes a facilitator function, so that then you can finalise and definalise your collection. So if you need to update data at any point, you can actually do that. So that's the intention we have moving forward. So
Rachel, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
I was actually able to definalise my data,
really?
so
okay, great.
Yeah, so it is a current function.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. That's good because I knew it was on the cards, so that's really good that you've been able to do that. So, yeah, so that's handy. You still have to contact MCRI to deconfirm your schema. So where it comes to the stuff that should be locked in for 12 months, that's where you do have to go back to MCRI. We do want to make it a little bit more complicated, at least for now. But in terms of the definalised stuff, it's good that that's already been done. So it just means you can update your data at any time now, which you couldn't before. But I reckon that's it for now. The other thing, we are also looking at what we do about the self-reflection tool. We are very, very aware that the self-reflection tool has not been as helpful as we might have liked it to be. So we will probably look at it. It has been helpful in certain ways in terms of letting people know exactly, the kind of expectations that, in an ideal improvement approach world, this is what we'd like to see happening. We're also really conscious that we operate in a real world context and we can't pretend anything else. So what we are proposing at this point in time, and I'd really love feedback on this as well, is that we will still have the same matrix so that, not this is like, the criteria might change slightly, but we'll still have that matrix part of the tool. But what we're thinking of using it is more as an improvement tool. So you'd really only select like 2 areas that you wanted to focus in on for 12 months, and you'd select those 2 areas and you'd come up with a couple of actions that you wanted to do in order, how you would know that that was improvement kind of thing. And that's all you'd do. So you'd still have the opportunity to look because for some new facilitators, it's kind of handy because you can go through and work out, where you're aiming to be in particular areas, but it's also very overwhelming. What we don't want is people to have an action plan, for instance, that has 35 actions on it, because that's just ridiculous. That's in nobody's best interest. It doesn't allow you then to do the best start improvement work, and that's pointless because it might be something like, getting everyone to sign your partnership agreement or something, and we don't want that. We really want to take that common sense approach to what the tool is used for. So we want to have the matrix there so that you're aware of what we're actually, in an ideal world where you're aiming for, and it will still be there in writing, and it will help regional staff to know what they're looking for as well. But it won't be something that you have an action plan on necessarily. So I'm really keen for feedback, not necessarily now, but certainly, I mean, you can now if you want to, but if you want to provide any feedback on that process and how you think it could work effectively, but realistically, we may prescribe the one around cultural safety, just that everyone has to focus on that, you know, in terms of their partnerships being culturally safe. I don't know at this point, but that's a possibility. Just and then you can just choose one or two others that you want to focus in on for the 12 months, and that's all. And so then when your ECPAPers come and have that catch-up meeting with you, it'll just be a touch base to find out how that's tracking. So it's just a reminder. It's a conversation starter basically that just prompts that, you know, how are you going toward this goal that you've set yourself. So much more around it, an improvement plan, I guess, than the self-reflection tool. It's sort of, it's been a little bit problematic at times. So we don't want that. That certainly wasn't the intention of it. It wasn't designed to be a tool that was going to be problematic for sites or ECPAPers. So, and that has been the case. So we're really keen to modify it now in a way that actually allows you guys to be supported and still allows everyone to know what they're aspiring to, but just gives us that little bit of extra flexibility, I guess. So it's not quite as annoying as it was, let's be honest. Yeah.
You can hear me. It's Kelly here in Coburg. Hello. It's great to hear that the reflection tool is going to be reviewed. But I've got a broader question around reporting, you know, which includes the reflection tool, because there's a lot of reporting in Best Start at a quarterly, then annual, then reflection tool. At a local level, we have our monitoring with our ECPAPers. Even at our site, we have our own, you know, organisational things. So I'm wondering if there's the opportunity to do a review of reporting in Best Start, because it's quite intense.
Yeah.
And it's quite repetitive through the year in terms of the quarterly report and the annual report.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why the shift, and it's sort of unfortunate because, you know, the annual report was literally just going to be what were your short-term outcome areas and just tell us what you achieved, basically. So, because we wanted, like, what we wanted was like similar to that that reflections document that we put out.
So I went back to that. Yeah. So I was looking at what the people had sort of, what you had pulled out, obviously, from others' annual reports, and was looking at that. And I get the idea. I think it's lovely. But I think for us as for us as Best Start facilitators, and I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of people that I've spoken to, but for us, we wonder where that information goes and you know, and how it's used, and then we don't get a lot of feedback. So in terms of for Best Start facilitators, we don't get to benefit from one another's reports.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yep. That's exactly right, and I don't think that's why that annual report. The idea was to have a report that could be used to make a document similar to that reflections document.
And that reflection document, I mean, we used that in Hume, and within our partnership we had a good look at it, and it gave us a good insight into what other sites were doing across the state, you know. Found it
exactly, and that's and like in part that's also the intent of the gallery section of the portal.
And the gallery
but that's also, you know, something that, you know, you have to, like, you still have to wade through a whole lot of information and stuff. So that's why we thought nice would be really cool. That was the intention of that, because what we don't want you to have to keep repeating what you've already put into your quarterly reports. And similarly, like, you put an awful lot of information into your PDSAs. You don't want that to then be repeated in the quarterly report, because the reality is you should be saying to us, read the PDSA.
That's right. That's what I find doing those.
Exactly.
Really cutting and pasting.
Exactly. And that's why I think just keeping in mind that summaries of that stuff should be really brief. Like, it doesn't have to be really extensive reporting. Those quarterly reports, and it does vary across the state, because some people do put in a huge amount of information into those quarterly reports, and that sometimes that's a local expectation as well from regional staff. So I do understand that, and it can also be a local expectation from within your own organisation. That might be an expectation. from the department central perspective, it really is just that high level summary to highlight what you've done so that it points us, like if there's some major learning, what we want to be able to do is really quickly identify that there's been some learning that might be useful to share with others. When the reports are really dense and you have to read through 30 of them, it takes an enormous amount of time. And by the time you get to like number 5, I'm not going to lie, you start going, oh, seriously, can you just like,
wrap it up.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to know, is there something useful here that I can look at? And so I think there's that it's a challenge as well around expectations. It's like locally, in your own organisations, locally from a regional perspective, and certainly centrally as well. So it is a challenge. So I think the review of reporting idea is a really great idea, and it's something, you know, like when we did the review of Best Start, you know, those few years ago when Melissa and I went around everywhere, one of the major things we wanted to achieve was less reporting, and we haven't done it. We've kind of like, it was supposed to be streamlined, but because of that repetitive nature, unfortunately, you've got a lot. So hear that loud.
Thank you. Thanks for taking that
I can't guarantee anything, but
no, I know, but
absolutely,
but thank you. Yeah.
No worries. Anything else from anybody at this point? It's almost speak now or forever hold your peace, but it's not. I'll promise you I'll listen if you actually have something else to say after this. But so just feel free to message if there is anything else that you don't feel has been covered or you're unclear on anything. And if regional staff can start forwarding those placeholders for those meetings, that'd be great. Just because the only reason they've been held up is because I haven't followed the correct regional, central to regional process yet, and I haven't gone through the EquiPAM, so I have to retrospectively fit that to our department model. So if ECPAPers could forward it out, that'd be awesome. Thank you. And then I'll work out with the powers that be in central and regional offices around that. Awesome. All right. Enjoy the time you've got back in your day, and if there's any other questions, email. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Rachel.
Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel.
Bye.